The recruiter's eyes, a pair of watery blue slits in a face as weathered as old leather, seemed to bore into my soul. "You understand the conditions, don't you, son?" he rasped, his voice a gravelly whisper that seemed to echo in the sparse, unheated office. 3 months, deep Siberia, no contact, no backup, just you, the watchtower and the cold. I nodded, trying to project an air of confidence I didn't entirely feel. "My name is Alex Volkov, and at 24, I was desperate. Desperate for money, desperate for a way out of the suffocating grip of my family's debt, and perhaps a little bit desperate for an adventure that would prove I wasn't just another city kid. The offer was astronomical, enough to clear everything and leave me with a comfortable cushion. All I had to do was spend a winter guarding a defunct, forgotten research outpost in the middle of nowhere. Easy, right? There's only one rule," he continued, leaning forward, his voice dropping to an almost inaudible level. "No matter what, do not open the main gate at night. No matter what you see, no matter what you hear, it stays shut until sunrise. Understand?" I gulped, a sudden chill that had nothing to do with the draft seeping into the room running down my spine. "Understood," I managed, my voice a little rougher than I intended. He gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Good, because if you break that rule, you won't just freeze." The journey was a blur of increasingly desolate landscapes. First, the endless taiga, then the sparse skeletal trees giving way to an unblemished expanse of snow and ice. The final leg was a shuddering ancient snowcat, grinding its way through drifts higher than a man. When it finally stopped, the silence that descended was absolute, a crushing weight that pressed in on my eardrums. The outpost was a collection of dilapidated buildings, hunched like forgotten beasts beneath a thick blanket of snow. At its center stood the watchtower, a gaunt skeletal structure of rusting metal and splintered wood, rising perhaps 5 stories into the perpetually overcast sky. The main gate, a massive, archaic contraption of iron and timber, was already closed, secured with a chain as thick as my arm and a padlock the size of my fist. My predecessor, a grizzled old-timer named Boris, who looked like he'd been carved from a block of ice, gave me a perfunctory tour. He pointed out the meager supplies, dried goods, canned food, and enough firewood to last well into spring if I was frugal. The generator, a temperamental beast that ran on diesel, was housed in a small shed next to the main building. Inside the tower, my living quarters were Spartan. A cot, a table, a small potbelly stove, and a single window offering a panoramic view of nothing. Just an endless white void. "Remember the rule, boy," Boris grunted, his breath pluming in the frigid air. "The gate, never, not for anything." He didn't elaborate, didn't offer any ghost stories or warnings beyond the recruiter's vague threat. He just climbed back into the snowcat, its engine sputtering to life, and disappeared into the vast whiteness, leaving me utterly alone. The first few weeks were a test of endurance, a battle against the crushing isolation and the relentless cold. The days blurred into a monotonous cycle of checking the generator, chopping wood, melting snow for water, and staring out at the unchanging landscape. The nights were worse. The wind howled, a mournful, predatory sound that seemed to carry whispers on its icy breath. Every creak of the old tower, every groan of the ancient wood became amplified, distorted into something sinister. I tried to keep my mind occupied. I read the few tattered books Boris had left behind, outdated scientific journals and a dog-eared collection of Chekhov. I cleaned my rifle repeatedly, though there was nothing to shoot out here, not even a rabbit. Mostly, I just watched and listened. The cold was a living entity. It seeped into my bones, a constant ache that never truly left. My breath froze on my eyelashes, and the inside of the tower, even with the stove roaring, never felt truly warm. I learned to sleep in layers, wrapped in every blanket I owned, and still, I shivered. Then came the dreams. They started subtly. Figures in the distance, indistinct shapes moving through the swirling snow. They grew more vivid, more disturbing. Faces, contorted in silent screams, pressed against the icy panes of my watchtower window. Hands, skeletal and clawed, reaching for me from the shadows. I'd wake in a cold sweat, my heart hammering against my ribs, convinced for a terrifying moment that the dreams were real. One night, I heard it. A faint scratching coming from the base of the tower. I dismissed it as the wind, or perhaps an animal, but it persisted, growing louder, more insistent. It sounded like fingernails, long and brittle, dragging against the metal struts. I clutched my rifle, straining my ears, my breath held captive in my lungs. Then, a low, guttural moan, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the very foundations of the tower. It wasn't human, not quite. I didn't sleep that night. I huddled by the stove, rifle across my lap, watching the inky blackness outside, convinced something was out there, watching me back. The moon, when it appeared through the perpetual cloud cover, was a cruel, mocking eye in the sky. It cast long, dancing shadows that played tricks on my eyes. I started seeing things, flashes of movement in the periphery of my vision. A shadow that lingered a moment too long behind a snowdrift. I told myself it was isolation, the lack of sleep, the creeping insanity that threatened to consume me. Then, the knocks began. At first, they were soft, almost imperceptible. Gentle taps on the main gate, barely audible above the howling wind. I ignored them, reminding myself of Boris's words, of the recruiter's chilling warning. No matter what you see, no matter what you hear, it stays shut until sunrise. But they grew bolder, louder, a rhythmic, heavy pounding that resonated through the frozen ground, shaking the very foundations of the tower. It sounded like someone was trying to break the gate down, a relentless, desperate assault. I peered through the grimy scope of my rifle, but saw nothing. Just the vast, empty expanse of snow shimmering under the pale moonlight. The sounds continued, a maddening, incessant drumbeat against the silence. And then, the voice. It was a whisper at first, carried on the wind, so faint I almost convinced myself I imagined it. A child's voice, pleading, "Papa, Papa, it's so cold. Please, let me in." My blood ran cold. A child, out here. My mind screamed that it was impossible. No one could survive out here for long, not in this cold. I pressed my face against the glass, straining my eyes, trying to pierce the swirling snow. The voice grew clearer, more urgent. "I'm freezing, Papa. My fingers, they're numb." A wave of icy dread washed over me, but it was quickly followed by a sickening surge of pity. What if it was real? What if some poor, lost child was out there, freezing to death? The thought was unbearable. I imagined the headlines, the guilt that would haunt me for the rest of my life. I stumbled back from the window, my hands shaking. The rule, the one rule. But what if it was a test? A moral dilemma designed to break me? "Please, my legs. I can't feel them," the voice whimpered, sounding closer now, directly outside the gate. I gripped the cold metal railing of the tower stairs, my knuckles white. The image of a small, shivering child succumbing to the merciless Siberian winter was seared into my mind. I couldn't live with myself. I couldn't. My resolve shattered. I descended the rickety stairs, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The gate mechanism was stiff, rusted almost solid. It took all my strength to crank the heavy wheel, the screech of protesting metal echoing through the desolate night. The chain, thick with frost, clattered against the iron. Finally, with a groan that seemed to tear through the silent night, the massive padlock clicked open. I swung the gate inward, just a crack, peering out into the swirling whiteness. "Hello?" I called out, my voice thin and reedy, lost in the vastness. "Is anyone there?" The wind howled, whipping snow into my face. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of the storm. My breath hitched in my throat. I was about to close it, to curse my foolishness, when I saw it. A tiny, bundled figure, huddled just beyond the gate. It was small, no bigger than a 5-year-old, wrapped in what looked like a tattered, frost-covered coat. Its head was bowed, hidden by a heavy hood. "Are you all right?" I whispered, my voice thick with concern, stepping out just a little further. "Come inside, quickly." The figure didn't move. It just stood there, still as a statue, facing away from me. "Hey," I urged, a new tremor of unease starting to prickle at the back of my neck. "Come on, you'll freeze." Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the small figure began to turn. The hood slid back, revealing not a child's face. It was a skull. Not human, not entirely. It was elongated, almost canine, with hollowed-out eye sockets that seemed to drink in the moonlight. Jagged, broken teeth jutted out from a gaping maw. The skin, where it existed, was stretched taut and translucent, a sickly white, like ancient parchment. What looked like matted hair, stiff with ice, clung to the bone. And the eyes, or what should have been eyes, there were none. Just two swirling vortexes of deeper, colder darkness that seemed to pull at my very soul. A choked cry escaped my throat. I stumbled backward, my mind reeling, trying to process the monstrous abomination before me. This wasn't a child. This was something else, something ancient, something evil. Then, from behind it, from the swirling snow that had seemed so empty moments before, more figures emerged. They were everywhere, shambling, skeletal forms, moving with an unnatural, jerky gait. Their numbers were impossible, an army of horrors rising from the white void. Some were short, like the first, twisted mockeries of children. Others were tall, gaunt spectres, their limbs impossibly long and thin. All of them wore the same tattered, frost-covered rags. All of them had those same nightmare-inducing faces, or lack thereof. Skulls, twisted and malformed, with those terrible, empty eye sockets. They made no sound, not a moan, not a whisper. Their movement was the only sound, the soft crunch of their feet on the snow, the rustle of their frozen clothes. They were silent, but their presence screamed of death and unbearable cold. I tried to move, to slam the gate shut, to run, but my limbs felt like lead. My mind was screaming, but my body wouldn't obey. I was paralyzed by a fear so profound, it felt like a physical weight pressing down on me. One of the taller figures, its head tilted at an impossible angle, took a slow, deliberate step towards me. Its hand, a collection of gnarled, frost-bitten bones, reached out. It wasn't menacing, not overtly, but the emptiness of its gesture, The sheer unnaturalness of its form was more terrifying than any roar or threat. Then, the cold intensified. It wasn't just the ambient temperature of Siberia. It was a cold that radiated from them. A metaphysical chill that pierced through my heavy winter gear, through my skin, into my very bones. It felt like my blood was turning to slush in my veins. My lungs burned with each ragged breath, the air so cold it felt like shards of ice. I could feel my body shutting down, piece by piece. My fingers, already numb from the cold, began to ache with a deep, excruciating pain. My toes, my feet, my legs, they were becoming unresponsive, turning to ice. I tried to cry out, but my vocal cords were frozen. The skeletal figures surrounded me, not touching me, not harming me physically, but their presence was a living, breathing frost. I could feel their collective gaze, those empty sockets boring into me, stripping away my warmth, my life force. I looked at the gate, still slightly ajar, a sliver of hope. I looked back at the horrors encircling me, and I understood. This wasn't just about freezing to death. This was about something far worse. They weren't here to kill me quickly. They were here to make me become one of them, to join their silent, frozen ranks. The last thing I saw, before the world went dark, before the cold consumed me entirely, was the small, child figure standing directly in front of me. Its skull face was inches from mine, and for a fleeting, horrifying moment, I thought I saw something in those empty sockets. Not eyes, not intelligence, but a flicker of ancient, agonizing hunger. I don't know how long I was out there. Minutes, hours, days. Time ceased to have meaning. When I regained a sliver of consciousness, it was not with a jolt, but a slow, agonizing thrum of pain. I was back inside the tower. I didn't know how. The gate was closed, locked. My body was a block of ice. Every joint screamed in protest when I tried to move. My breath was a shallow, painful gasp. I couldn't feel my fingers or my toes. My vision was blurry, rimmed with dark spots. I dragged myself to the small, cracked mirror Boris had left. What I saw made me scream, though no sound escaped my throat. My face was ashen, almost grey. My lips were blue, cracked and bleeding. Frostbite had begun its cruel work on my nose and ears. But it was my eyes that truly terrified me. They were wide, bloodshot, and reflected not the vibrant green they once were, but a dull, lifeless grey. And there was something else, a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer of the same profound emptiness I had seen in their eyes. I was still alive, technically, but something vital had been taken. My warmth, my vitality, my hope. The stove, though I hadn't tended it, was still glowing faintly, embers clinging to life. I crawled towards it, every inch in agony, willing myself to feel something, anything beyond the omnipresent cold. I tried to light a fire, but my fingers were useless, clumsy lumps of frozen flesh. The matches slipped from my grasp. I cried, silent, frozen tears that left icy trails on my cheeks. The cold inside the tower was a constant creeping presence now. It had permeated everything. The walls, the floor, the very air itself felt like a tomb. And the sounds, they were different now. The scratching was gone. The knocking had ceased. Instead, I heard them. Whispers. They weren't outside anymore. They were inside the tower with me. Faint, ethereal whispers that seemed to coil around my ears, chilling me to the bone. They were not words, not intelligible sounds. More like the rustle of dry leaves, the hiss of dry ice, the whisper of ancient dust. I dragged myself to the window, the panoramic view of the endless snow. It was still there, untouched, desolate. But now I saw movement, not outside, not the skeletal figures, my own shadow. It moved independently of me, a dark, elongated spectre stretching across the snow. And it was beckoning, not in a friendly way, more like a silent, terrible invitation. An invitation to join the dance of the dead. I was freezing. The cold was a constant, agonizing companion. It burrowed deep into my very marrow. I knew I wouldn't last much longer. My body was giving up. But it wasn't just my body. My mind was fracturing. The line between reality and a hallucination was blurring. I saw them in the corners of my eyes, their empty sockets watching me. I heard their whispers, a chorus of silent torment. I found the small, leather-bound journal Boris had left. I didn't remember seeing it before. My frozen fingers fumbled with the brittle pages. The handwriting was neat, precise, in stark contrast to the rough exterior of the man. The last entry, dated 2 years prior, sent a fresh wave of terror through my already shattered mind. November 14th. The whispers grow louder. They are inside. I hear them breathing, though they have no lungs. I see them in the reflection of the window, just behind me. They want my warmth. They want my voice. They want my humanity. I opened the gate. I heard the child. Foolish. So foolish. They are not physical beings, not truly. They are the absence of everything. They are the cold given form. They are the hunger of the void. I am freezing. But it is not the cold of the air that kills me. It is the cold they bring. It is the cold of their touch, though they never touch me. It is the cold that seeps into your soul and transforms you. I can feel myself changing. My skin is grey. My eyes, they are not my own. I see the world through their emptiness. I hear their silent commands. They want me to join them, to watch, to wait, to be the next lure. The gate, it must never open. I failed. I am becoming one of them. I will be the one whispering through the storm, calling out to the next poor soul who dares to brave the winter watch. If you read this, whoever you are, close the gate. And if you have already opened it, pray. Pray for a quick end, because there is no escape from the cold they bring, not once it's inside you. The journal slipped from my numb fingers, clattering to the icy floor. The words swam before my eyes, confirming my deepest fears. Boris hadn't escaped. He had become part of the very thing he warned me about. He was one of them. He had been the child, hadn't he? Or perhaps he was one of the whispers now. The whispers intensified, swirling around me, a chilling chorus of despair. I felt a profound sense of loss, not just for my life, but for my very self. I was being consumed, my essence siphoned away, replaced by the crushing emptiness that they embodied. My reflection in the glass was clearer now. The grey had deepened. The emptiness in my eyes was undeniable. I could feel the cold radiating from me, a palpable chill. I was a magnet for it, an anchor for their presence. I tried to resist. I tried to summon some last spark of defiance, some warmth within me. But it was useless. The cold had won. My body began to shudder, not from cold, but from something deeper, a transformation. My fingers, still stiff, began to curl inward, slowly, painfully, into claws. My jaw ached as it slowly, imperceptibly, began to distort. I heard a new voice now, clearer than the whispers, a voice that resonated deep within my own mind. It was my voice, yet not. It was a chorus of ancient, frozen agony. Welcome, brother. Welcome to the watch. And I knew, with a horrifying certainty, that when the next warm body arrived at the outpost, when the next fool sought his fortune in the Siberian wastes, I would be waiting. I would be the child. I would be the whisper. I would be the cold. And I would be freezing them, slowly, completely. I had broken the rule, and now I would forever be the one who helped others break it too. The last thing I felt was not pain, not fear, but an overwhelming absolute cold. A cold that was no longer outside me, but deep within, a part of my very being. And then, nothing. Only the silence of the Siberian winter and the endless watch